Holy shit. As many of you know, the fine folks over at Viltrox are doing crazy things, crazy good things, like this right here, the 75mm f1.2 for APS-C. I have called this the best portrait lens that money can buy for APS-C regardless of brand. They also have a 27mm 1.2 that is equally as amazing. Now they have introduced a brand new full frame line, the Lab series. And this one right here is the first installment in the Lab series. When I was at NAB in Las Vegas, that is the first time that they told me about this lens, and I was pretty blown away with what they were saying about the lens, and what they were saying has turned out to be true. These things are meant to compete directly with the G Master lenses and the Sigma Art lenses, and compete they do. When you factor in price, surpass. If you want the clip notes to this review, this lens is outstanding optically in almost every single category. It is a big and heavy lens, and it does have a fair amount of focus breathing, and its aperture ring, that might be something that would turn some people off. We will talk about those three flaws and how they relate to the 135 G Master lens, which shares one of those flaws. So of course, disclaimers, Viltrox did send this lens out for the purpose of review at no cost to myself. They don't get to see the video or have any input on it, but I am a big fan of Viltrox lenses, so when they announced this, I knew that I would like it, so let that bias creep in where it will. Now, a 135 is a tight focal length, and you're meant to stand a little bit back from your subject and get those portraits, but the portraits you get will absolutely blow your mind because the background is just gone. It is just a creamy, cream-corned mush back there. There's nothing like a 135 f1.8 when you want that real pop for your portraits. So from this point forward, when anyone asks me to do a portrait session, this is the lens that is coming with me. Now let's talk about the build quality of this Lab lens that Viltrox says is their most premium line, and I can believe it. This is as premium as a lens gets in terms of build quality. It feels so great, just like a G Master lens. It's got the nice rubberized ring here for focus. It has an autofocus to manual focus switch, 2 focus hold buttons that can be programmed. It also has a clicky or declicky aperture ring, but it's a special one. Let's get to that in a second. It also has the switch for near focus and far focus, or you can just use the full range. I've been using it on the full range, and it's been working just fine for me. It has an 82mm filter thread, just like the Sony GM135, and it has a nice red rubber gasket for weather sealing, as the lens is dust and moisture resistant. It has an excellent and solid lens hood with a rubber ring around the front, so you can set the lens and camera down all at once on that rubber ring, and it will balance just fine, very reminiscent of a G Master lens hood. And now let's talk about that aperture ring, because this is quite different than a G Master lens in that there are no markings on the aperture ring on the lens itself, but it does have this nice bright LCD screen. So as you move the aperture ring, you can see the aperture value right there on that little screen, and it can be clicked for nice little satisfying clicks or declicked to make it nice and smooth. And when you are in manual focus and you move the focus ring, you will also see distance markings right there, so that could be very helpful for people when they're trying to focus. Now, I don't know exactly how I feel about the LCD screen because I haven't used it for a lengthy enough period of time to decide whether or not I like it more or less, or I am neutral to it. But I have always preferred an aperture ring that I can glance down at, know where I am, and be able to turn it on the fly. This one, not as easy to glance down and take a look at where you are for your aperture. However, when it's dark outside and dim lighting conditions, you can see the screen a lot better than looking at the side of your lens. And also it helps with that manual focus. So the jury is out for me. Now, if you were to pick one right now, I would go with what I am used to, which is the traditional aperture ring where I have the notches right there on the lens. However, some people might really prefer this, and who knows, I might after a few months of using this. But I have yet to make that decision. However, something fun with the screen is that you can actually customize it to add different images or text for when the lens actually boots up. And at first it just said Viltrox, but then I quickly switched it to Mark Rules written in blue because why not, right? That's a bit of fun. You can just connect it to an app, Bluetooth, which is a very rare thing for a lens. You can connect the lens Bluetooth through the app and you can change things like the duration of that boot up screen or what you want to write on it, and also update the lens right from the app connected via Bluetooth, which I did do before I completed my review and I had no trouble. Now, as I mentioned, and you can see, this is a big and heavy lens. It is 1,300 grams, and that is much bigger than the Sony 135, which is 900 grams. And that Sony 135 is a pretty big lens to take around at 900 grams, but it is dwarfed by this one right here. And that's the thing, if you're going to have this much cost savings with this fantastic optical quality, there's going to be some compromises somewhere, and mostly with this lens, it's going to be the size. It has a minimum focus distance of 0.72 meters, which you can see right there on the LCD screen, which is exactly the same as the GM. It also has 11 bladed aperture, which once again, the same as the Sony GM that has 11 blades. The autofocus on this lens is fantastic. They're using something called a Hyper VCM motor, and while not completely dead silent like the Sony's autofocus motors, it is quite quiet and it works really, really fast. Just moving these large glass elements around, just lightning quick and getting that focus every time. No hesitation, no pulsing, just bang, you get your focus. Whether you are in AFC, AFS, or you are tracking, the focus is outstanding on this lens. Sharpness. You will be hard-pressed to find any lens anywhere that is sharper than this lens. The GM 135 was famed for its sharpness, and this one is easily just as sharp. It is crazy sharp in the center all the way out to the corners. Corner-to-corner sharpness, even down at f1.8. When you're at minimum focus distance, the f1.8 still looks nice and sharp and contrasty. It is marvelous when it comes to sharpness, corner-to-corner, even at minimum focus distance. Chromatic aberration and longitudinal chromatic aberration are extremely well controlled. You can barely see any CA or Bokeh down at f1.8, maybe a tiny hint of it if you have a backlit situation and you raise those shadows up, but it is very hard to find any CA or Bokeh. They did an amazing job with the aberration suppression. Sunstars, you get a nice, pleasing Sunstar. They start to come out at about f10. Not the strongest Sunstars in the world, but certainly not messy or clumpy. They're really well-defined Sunstars, and I think they look nice. Flaring and ghosting are really well controlled because they use excellent coatings on this lens, so you're not going to get crazy flares. Your photo's not going to get washed out just because a bright light enters. Also, you can use this premium lens hood, and then you shouldn't have any trouble at all. But even without the lens hood, you're not going to see crazy flares or any lack of contrast with this lens. Once again, very similar to the G Master. Now, focus breathing, as I mentioned earlier, is very present on this lens. When you are focusing from minimum to infinity, you will see the screen moving a great deal. Now, the Sony 135 also breathes very heavily. However, with the newer Sony camera bodies, if you are in video, you can use that focus breathing compensation, and then that can make up for that focus breathing. And with these third-party lenses, you can't use the focus breathing compensation in video, so you are stuck with that focus breathing. With vignetting and distortion, I don't even have a profile yet to correct any vignetting or distortion in Lightroom, and I don't need one because you won't see any distortion to speak of with this lens, and the vignetting, the corners aren't dark at all. So they made this lens already straight out of camera really great in terms of distortion and vignetting. I'm sure there will be a Lightroom profile to make it absolutely perfect. However, really you can just use this right out of the box. When it comes to the bokeh, let's look at the balls first. Immaculate balls here on the Viltrox Lab lens. Perfectly round, no onion ringing, no haloing, just super, super clean. And you get a tiny little bit of shape towards the corner. And as you step the lens down to say f2.8 or f4, you are going to start to notice notice the shape of the blades of that 11-bladed iris. But stepped all the way down to f1.8, the bokeh balls on this are as good as any I have ever seen. With the regular autofocus backgrounds, you're also going to get excellent results, partly because of the focal length. 135 millimeters, your subject's just going to stand out so much from the background. It's just going to be nothing back there that you can discern at all, and it's just that really big wow factor, that pop of your subject right from your photo. Now, I would say the GM backgrounds are probably a little smoother, and if there's one area that Viltrox could maybe catch up to the GM in, it might be in this out of focus background area. I think a GM is just a little bit smoother back there, and you can get a little tiny bit of busyness with this Viltrox lens, but really that is just splitting hairs at this point because it still looks phenomenal. When it comes to value and price, the Sony 135 GM is coming in at about $2,100 USD, and this one will be $899 USD. At least that's what they're telling me from the literature that I received. $899 for this level of quality. That is an outstanding value. I am so excited about this Viltrox Lab series and what they will be coming out with next, because this lens is as good as any lens that's out there. A G Master lens, a Sigma Art lens, and now Viltrox Lab. They are right up there. Congratulations, Viltrox. You really did what you said you were going to do, which was making a lens this premium at an affordable price. Just well done. I'm happy that it is here. It will push all of the other companies to do better things. I love when I see stuff like this. Anyway, thanks for watching this. Tell me what you think down below, and we'll have a nice little discussion about it. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.